Hello and welcome back to the Ospreys Eyrie podcast. The very special podcast this week. Actually, we are. Well, let's get right into. We've been hyping it up for the last week now. We are joined this week by brand new Ospreys CEO Lance Bradley. Welcome, Lance. How are we?
Thank you very much. Hello, guys. Hello, everybody.
And as usual, I'm joined by the regular crew. The man. Who seems to be covering every sport at the minute, Yestin, and Robbie, the video wizard. How are we, boys?
Yeah, I'm all good, and I'm sure Robbie's been probably more busier than me in terms of finding content. But yeah,
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
You've been covering football.
Yeah, I've been covering women's football this afternoon, seeing the university win the league in quite spectacular fashion. So that was quite interesting. But I'm still here, and that's a good thing.
And Lance,
I haven't been mixing my drinks, just on the rugby.
Lance, you've been busy today as well. Where have you been?
Yeah, I have. This morning I went down to our Ospreys in the community team, who I have to say do an absolutely super job for us. We're hosting a girls' rugby camp, and there were 280 girls at this camp, which was just fantastic to see, all kind of so excited about being involved in excuse me, a camp with the Ospreys, and actually it gives me great hope that there's a really good future for rugby in this area when you see so many youngsters enjoying it like that. And then they formed the kind of welcome party and the parade party for the Swansea University girls match this afternoon, which they won as well. So yeah, it was a brilliant day.
That's brilliant, and I have a feeling that's going to lead into a certain question later on that somebody who wants to ask.
Okay.
So before we head into sort of the questioning, I think a great summary that I saw on Twitter was from the guys at Turf Creative, based in Bridgend, who wrote in to say, great to see such interaction and transparency with all the supporters already. It might not please all of them all the time, and by God, we know it doesn't please all of them all the time. But all you can be is honest and outline what priorities are and act on it. It's exciting times for Ospreys fans and the Australian community. So I think I speak for everyone when we say, your honesty and integrity from the beginning has been a breath of fresh air in not just Ospreys but Welsh rugby in general.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's something I believe passionately in.
Brilliant. Yestin, take us away.
Yeah, so the first question comes from Twitter from Rodri_Ranker, obviously follower of the pod. And he asked, what are the notable differences between running an English club and a Welsh region? Obviously, you haven't been here very long, but is there maybe a difference compared to your time at Gloucester compared to it now with the Ospreys?
There's a difference because there's different challenges here than there was at Gloucester, but a lot of the challenges are very similar. When I went to Gloucester, it was losing a lot of money, and you'll have seen recently some of the English clubs have posted their accounts from last season, and some of them are still losing a lot of money. But my background, for the people who don't know, is I was 30 years in the automotive industry before I came into Gloucester 5 and a bit years ago. And that's an industry that has lots of turnover, but very low margins, which means that you've got to look at absolutely every expense and every revenue opportunity. Otherwise, you dip into loss, and that's obviously no good. So that was really useful background to go and run Gloucester rugby, and I had a good team there, and we were able to turn it around so that we were making a profit, and that's quite unusual in the English Premiership. So that was pleasing to be able to do that. We also invested heavily in the women's team, who won the league last year, and we did invest a lot in the men's team as well. The results there haven't been quite as good as we would have liked, but the basis at Gloucester is really strong. And the thing with any any organisation, including a sporting organisation, it's really hard to do things that have an immediate and sustainable difference. You know, if you want sustainable success, you have to, there's no substitute for hard work, putting all the building blocks in and working towards that happening. And actually that's the same here. So, you know, it's no secret that the club's losing quite a lot of money each year. And there's a number of reasons for that. And I've been brought in to stop that. And, you know, I've done it before and hopefully I can do it again.
Yeah.
How aware were you? Oh, sorry.
No, go on, Robbie. Go ahead.
How aware were you of, before you came in, the kind of madness that is Welsh rugby as a whole? Because I think we've seen some people come in the past to positions within the Welsh regions and then gone, blimey, it's different to elsewhere, the amount kind of going on. How closely do you follow that? How much do you kind of know what was going on in
you know,
Wales?
I've seen it, and you know, I've been, although I was working in English rugby, you know, you do have contact with Welsh rugby. You know, and the other thing that I should mention, first of all, you know, I've been talking about the revenue. Actually, the most important thing is success on the pitch. So that's the reason that we're all here. It's not, you know, it has to be a business off the pitch, but the only reason that the commercial side is there is to get us success on the pitch. So that's a clear focus. So I was aware of the issues. Obviously, I did a lot of research about Ospreys before I came over. This wasn't the only job that I was offered, but the setup with Y11 and what their plans are, and you're aware that they have relationships with other clubs, and that's around the world, and that's really interesting and actually really clever. So it's one of the things that I'm looking forward to explaining a bit more about when I can. And I'm afraid tonight's not the night that I can do that. But it's you know, it's exciting. So I was pretty aware of it. I also think, and I know there's a lot of skepticism around the WRU, and there's been some decisions made in the past that you wonder how they were made. But I met with Abby Tierney, the new CEO there last week, and I feel really confident. She's a breath of fresh air. She understands the problems. She understands that you can't work against the pro clubs. You've got to work with them, and that we're much more powerful if we all work together, because a lot of our objectives are the same. We want Welsh rugby to be successful. And, you know, we want the national team to be successful, but there's a recognition that to do that, you've got to have the pro clubs being successful. So, yeah, I was aware of it, but some of it I know that I can do. Some of the problems at Ospreys, and it's not a club riddled with problems, but, you know, the financial side of it in particular, you know, I've got a pretty good idea of how we can fix that. It's difficult to do it without your governing body supporting what you're trying to do. But I really have complete confidence that the WRU are on board with making the pro teams a success.
Yeah, just want to quickly move on to the team culture side of things. You know, how would you measure, you know, the ways of measuring an effective team culture? And was there any particular example of a side maybe throughout the past that you thought of a good team culture that you want to maybe embed into the Ospreys?
Yeah, it's I mean, that's an interesting question. You don't actually see the culture of a club unless you're inside it. So, you know, clubs can put out statements about, you know, our boys clean the changing rooms themselves, or, you know, everybody does that. But it's only when you're inside the club that you see the culture. The first time I went to Llandarcy and Toby was showing me around, you know, we went into the players' room, and at the time the players were still out training, but a couple of the players came in and took their shoes off before they came in and came over and introduced themselves and shook hands. You know, nobody had told them to do that. That's just because it's a tight group and they have respect for for their teammates and other colleagues. So that kind of thing is really telling in what's happening, and you can kind of see it in the games. If you look at our team on paper on Sunday, a lot of youngsters in there, a lot of players who haven't played a lot, and they're all playing a mile above sea level, which pretty much nobody's ever done before, against a very strong South African team. On paper, you would have said that's an easy victory for Lions, and that's what the bookmakers said. The bookmakers said that Lions would win by, I think, 10 points. But luckily, we don't play on paper. We play on grass, and it was the spirit of the team, and skill and coaching and all the rest of it. But that level of togetherness, I thought really shone through, and it's hard to measure it. You just know it when it's there.
Absolutely. This is from Phipps Tony on Twitter, who asks about given the success of the Brewery Field game on New Year's Day, will you be considering alternate venues for the last 16 game against Sale in particular? But I think generally as well, those games being moved around the region, looking at, Bridgend, at Neath as well, looking around there.
Well, the venue for the Sale and time for the Sale games is going to be announced tomorrow morning.
Oh, brilliant.
So it's, but I'm afraid you'll have to wait for that. And look, I recognise how good the atmosphere was on New Year's Day. I wasn't able to make the game myself, but I watched it. Well, I watched most of it on BBC. So I could see that, and it wasn't perfect conditions for a fabulous atmosphere, but it didn't make any difference. So, and actually that's one of the reasons that we want to move to a smaller stadium, is to regenerate that kind of atmosphere. We have a good relationship with Swansea City. I went and spoke to their chairman and COO before saying anything to anybody else, and they were very supportive of what we want to do. They were quite focused on doing the right thing for the area, not just for themselves. So that was very encouraging. But we do have to be mindful that we have a contract with them, and that contract requires us to play games at the Swansea.com stadium. So we do have to obviously respect that, and we're working with them to find a new venue. So it's important that we do the right thing, and actually, regardless of what the contract says, that we do the right thing by them. So I understand the attraction, and there may be some games at other venues, especially when there's fixture clashes, obviously with Swansea City. But most of our games will continue to be at the Swansea.com.
Cool. So I've got a question from at Ron Swanson 145 on X, and his more focusing on sort of the playing budget issue. And he says, are you optimistic that revenues for playing budgets can increase? And would there be any hope of any of the four clubs signing more established, in quotes, world-class players in the future to supplement the young academy squads that we have?
Yeah, look, it's something that we talked about when I had the meeting at the WRU, and there's general recognition that a salary cap of 4.5 is, let's say, challenging. We're in a good place because our academy pathway has been strong for a number of years. So we've got a lot of talented youngsters coming through, and the coaches that they've got working with them are really good coaches. So that actually, I think, puts us in the best position of any of the four pro clubs in Wales. But there is a recognition that if we want to be fully competitive, that budget will have to to increase. Sorry, when that will happen, I don't know. But that was one of the major topics of discussion with the WRU, and everybody recognised that it needed to happen.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, yeah, that's a brilliant answer.
Yeah, and a question from G. Tompkins.
And sorry to interrupt you, but just to pick up on that, it's not necessarily to sign in world-class players. Our philosophy will still be to develop local players where we can, and having an increased budget will hopefully mean that we can hang on to them longer, and perhaps for their whole careers. So that's the real benefit of it. Our strategy will still be to develop local talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and a question from Jay Tompkins on X kind of maybe leads onto that about developing younger players. What's the ambitions on the pitch for the next 3 to 5 years? For the Ospreys.
Yeah, I need to sit down with Toby and go through that, and I've mentioned it to him when we've been talking, but we've not had a lot of time together yet because he's been in South Africa for a couple of weeks, and then there's a couple of weeks break now. But it's one of the things that we will sit down and agree what we're aiming for. One of the things that I particularly liked, the first time I met Toby, he said, look, my rugby philosophy is we do want to win games, but we're in the entertainment business. And I think that shows in the way that we're playing. It's you can't, with the best will in the world, you can't win every game. Nobody wins every game. So we need to have an experience for fans that when they come to watch us, even if we don't win, they still have a good day out. And I know that we all have a much better day out if we win. That solves everything. But we want it to be a great experience. And if you've watched a really entertaining game and for whatever reason, the other side is just, better than you can still enjoy it. So success is obviously measured in things you win, but it is measured in other things too, like how entertaining the game is. And our game is actually really entertaining at the moment. Somebody said to me on Twitter today, I'd come, but I expect you to win 60% of your games and 80% of your home games. We've won 62% of our games and 86% of our home games. So we are an entertaining side and we are a successful side. And that's something that I'm surprised that there's a group of people, and I know it's X, and that's not necessarily representative, but who just seem to think that isn't the case, that we're not playing exciting rugby and that we're not winning, when neither of those are true.
Just to quickly follow up on that, and this is probably a question you can't answer. What is the situation with Toby's contract?
I would never talk about an individual's contract.
Obviously, is that something that's ongoing?
It does, as I say, I would never talk about.
That's fair. That's fair enough. That was a pie in the sky question.
No, that's fine.
So just to pick up on the point you're making about fan experience, this is from Sydney Squash on Twitter again. What, in your opinion, are the 3 most crucial attributes for the new stadium when it comes down the line?
In terms of fan experience, or in terms of
so it's primarily for supporters, but also anything else from any angles.
Yeah, I think we need to be able to generate a great atmosphere. So that means that it needs to be the right size. And what I would actually like is a stadium of, and we haven't fixed on numbers, but we're kind of thinking around 6,000, because I want it to sell out. At the moment, nobody buys a ticket early because you can walk up on the day, and then if it's raining, people don't come. So it's we need to get away from that, and people always want what you can't have. So if we start to sell out, we'll get more people wanting to come. But when the fans do come, it needs to be a good stadium. It needs to be easy to get in and out of. There needs to be pre and post match entertainment of some kind. The food and drink needs to be of a decent quality and at prices that people think are reasonable. And food and drink prices in a stadium are never going to be as cheap as you can get in Wetherspoons. That's not how it works. But you can get the quality up to a level that people find good. For hospitality fans, we need to have good hospitality facilities. We actually do have that at the Swansea.com stadium. The quality hospitality is good there. But we need to make sure that we've still got that as well. And if we want to attract children to games, which we do because, they're the next generation of fans, we need to have things that are attractive to children. So we need to have, a kids meal deal that the parents look at and think, actually, yeah, that's fair enough. And, we've got the Ospreys mascot who goes around, anything to engage the different groups of people. I could turn that question around to you and say, as fans, what would you expect to see?
It's a really I think as a fan who's been a season ticket holder for many years now, you do. I'm a big frequenters of the Riverside. Not necessarily big drinkers, but we enjoy the atmosphere in there, and supporters club do great things. Obviously I don't hang around with something there's a lot on for the kids and things like that, and a lot has been talked about a fan zone, a proper fan zone, and that's something that I know David Buttress has talked about with the Cabbage Patch. They've got a Rodney Parade and sort of developing that into a proper fan zone. The Scarlets have got the Barn, I think, and then Cardiff is one big fan zone. Let's not beat around the bush there. It is just one big pub. So having just an area where everything's localized, everything's centralized, I just think lends more to a better atmosphere.
No, I agree, and that's absolutely part of the plans. It's we want to have a good fan zone.
So not to butt you up, but something like what Gloucester have. I'm very close to a couple of Gloucester fans, and the entrance the players come in is through the fan zone, essentially. Stuff like that lends itself a long way to fan interaction and whatnot.
Yeah, it does, and the players are our biggest assets. So it's it's the thing that we all get most excited about. So the more and game day is difficult because certainly before the match you can't ask players to do very much because they're preparing for the game. But there's no reason why, if there's injured players, you can't have them in the fan zone having photos taken or whatever. The players that want to do it, you can't force people to do things they don't want to do. But
no, absolutely,
there'll be players here who love interacting with fans, and so why wouldn't we do that? That would be a great thing to do.
I believe it's my question now. I apologize. So this one's talking about the youth, the region. So obviously our regional age grade team are doing very well at the minute. We're sitting top of the league. But Catherine on Facebook has asked, other than the college pathway, what is in place to spot potential talent for those players who aren't academic? So those who maybe choose to go down the apprenticeship route and only play for their local clubs.
Yeah. That's a question I can't answer at the moment because I don't know. So I've got a meeting with the academy guys, Gareth and the others, literally tomorrow morning, where I'm going to be talking to them about what do we do and how do we do it. So I'm happy to answer that question at a later date, but at the moment I can't tell you what we do.
No, absolutely. I believe it is now Yestin.
There's a question from Steve on X. Obviously, you've mentioned the local interaction with supporters and local businesses, and the question really is about the option of taking a home game to London every year. Obviously, there was a big uproar of it when it was first announced. So I just want to maybe get your views on it. What your thoughts are on maybe having a game in London every year.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we're still considering. We haven't made a final decision on it, but we are still considering it. The game last year against I forget which of the South African teams it was.
The Sharks.
But Sharks, that's right. A lot of people have said to me we're not interested in watching South African rugby here, which slightly surprises me that people don't want to watch the world champions because you'd think they would. But if that's a genuine thing, then if we take a game to London where there is a big South African base, or perhaps a big Irish base if we had a game against an Irish team, then the likelihood is that we would get a much bigger crowd than we would get here. And that was certainly the case at the Stoop in November, I think it was, before I joined, but I think it was November. So that's and prices are much higher in West London than they are here. So from a revenue point of view, it was massively better than playing it at home. But if we get fans filling our stadium here, then that would be a much different decision to make as to whether we wanted to do that. You know, it's partly promoting the URC to a different audience by taking it to London, and it's partly because it's promoting Ospreys to a different audience, and it's partly a revenue consideration because we did make much more money from the game in London than we do here. So we are looking at it. I would love to play every game here to a full house, and if we get that, then that's the perfect solution. But if we're not getting that, then we have to look at what other opportunities there are.
No, absolutely.
I just to pick up on, I mean, it's kind of the $1 million question, the big one that Di Bish on Facebook has asked. On the new ground, he asks, when are we likely to see firm plans or firm suggestions on the new ground, on the location and other details?
Well, what we're currently doing is feasibility studies for a number of options, and a few people have said to me, "Yeah, but you've already decided to go, you know, here or here, or you know," and it's always somewhere different depending on where they don't live. No decision's been made. We haven't signed anything. We've had some really good conversations with the appropriate people in a couple of locations, and I've got other meetings next week. As soon as we're able to have something definite, we will tell fans, and I want to keep people informed. As for timescale, it's going to take a little while. You know, I've said that I want to hear from fans, and we're setting up a meeting at the game against Ulster on February the 18th, I think it is.
18th, yeah.
So, because that's important, I want to hear what people think. At the moment, it seems that everybody from Swansea thinks we should stay in Swansea. Everybody from Neath thinks we should go to Neath, and everybody again thinks we should go to Bridgend. But and I get that. But it would be interesting to hear the views of people who actually come to games as to what they think. We're also going to talk to our business partners about what they think and their views on it, and we're going to take into account the views of people who don't come to games but might if we did something different. So to answer your, it's a rather long-winded way of saying I don't know yet, but it takes a while. It takes a while to plan it, and we have to make sure that we get it right. We do also need to see some indication from fans that they're willing to support the club, because the current level of support that we're getting isn't enough to justify a new stadium. So we need to see that, you know, and I've been very lucky. I've had a load of interaction on X and you know, in the press and what have you. We do need to see that translate into ticket sales, just to say, yeah, actually they are engaged and interested in what we're doing. And therefore it's worth pursuing this. But I would think that it's probably 3 months before we'll be able to give you a much better indication.
So what you're saying is we won't be merging with Ealing anytime soon?
No, we won't. And to be clear, we're not going to be merging with anybody anytime soon.
No, absolutely. Sort of on that announcing the sort of time frame type thing, it's getting to the time where re-signings, especially in the climate that we're in, are happening. Cardiff have started to announce theirs. Dragons have started to announce, you know, their re-signings. Are we likely to see any re-signings in the future? You know, in the near future?
I certainly hope so.
Good. That's good. We just, I think fans have a real affinity to this squad, more so than maybe the Galactico eras of the past, because of just how relatable this squad is. So you're so keen to make sure that you especially your local boys are sticking around. So.
And that's really important, and it's one of the things we're working on. Is the squad has a lot of local boys in it, and we need to make sure that there's the connection from where they are now to where they came from, and we've got a few things planned to emphasise that. I can't give you details of the re-signings at this time, but you won't be disappointed.
Brilliant. That's what we like to hear. Speaking of, you mentioned at the start both, everything you've been up to today and when you were at Gloucester, the role you had in Gloucester Hartpury and building that up and building that to the point at which, as you said, they won the league last year, which was amazing. And in that first interview you gave with the Ospreys YouTube channel, when you first announced you came in, you mentioned wanting both little boys and little girls in the future to be, building towards dreaming of playing for the Ospreys. Is a full-fledged senior women's team something that you have as a target, something you have in mind, something that's in any way in the conversations, or is it kind of just a pipe dream for one day?
No, it's absolutely in our plans, and it was something that when I was talking to the Y11 guys before I joined, there were a couple of things that I needed to understand. One of them was the commitment to move stadium. But the other one was we need a women's team, and they're in complete agreement with that. It's essential for us to have a women's team. The only question at the moment is what league would they play in, and how soon can we do it? So because as you know, there are a couple of women's teams in Wales now. So we just need to understand where our team would fit into it.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think so. And it's really important. Not just because it's the right thing to do, and why would you exclude half the population from playing for your club, but it's really, if you look at what's happened in particularly English football, women's football, it's exploded. And actually rugby's doing the same. At Gloucester we hosted the England v Wales Six Nations game a couple of seasons ago. And it was a world record crowd at that time, and it was, I think it was 15 something thousand. The record now, 2 years later, is 50 something thousand. That's how quickly it's growing. It's you ignore it at your peril. And from a financial point of view, the sponsors, when we started doing the proper investment into Gloucester Hartpury, I went to the Gloucester men's team sponsors and said, you'll do the women as well, won't you? And good news is it's only this percent of and everybody said yes, because why would you not? When I was just before I left, we were talking to a very big sponsor who was saying, we'd like to sponsor your women's team, and if we have to sponsor the men's team as well, we will. That's a 180-degree shift. That's amazing. So, but that's the way it's going. And I don't know if any of you guys watch women's rugby, but it's different to men's rugby because it's not as much into big hits. So there's actually, and the men are going to kill me for this, but there's kind of more skill in it. It's a bit more like rugby was like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So there's the ball's in play for a lot longer, and it's just a slightly different game, but it's a really entertaining game.
It's the biggest area of growth in, as you said, rugby
Absolutely.
right now, but sport in general. Yeah, it's been enormously blowing up. It's really exciting to hear.
Yes, Tim.
I believe it might be one of the final questions. Obviously, someone coming from a Gallagher Premiership background, and I'm pretty sure you've had a couple of debates with people online about this particular topic. But I just want to get your thoughts on the URC as a league, as a competition. Obviously, what's your thoughts of the inclusion of the South African sides coming in, and just your general thoughts on the URC?
Yeah, it's and I'm aware of the feelings of some Welsh fans about it, but it's actually a really good league, and I've been obviously looking at some statistics and reports and stuff since I've been here, and there's one of them that shows what fans think of the league from each of the countries that they're from. Literally every country apart from Wales has a very positive perception of the league. Even English fans have a better perception of the league than Welsh fans do, and they're not even in it. So it's and somebody said to me today, "Oh, are you blaming us?" I'm not blaming Welsh fans. That's not the point at all. But somewhere the message has got lost about what a good league it is. And the South African teams coming in, I know that makes it difficult to go to an away game. I understand that. But the reality is, even in England, most fans don't go to away games. They mostly only go to their home games. So the fact that it's in South Africa means that it's difficult for anybody to go. But even now, it's not all that normal for there to be huge swathes of travelling away fans. And what the South Africans bring is something new. It brings World Cup winners into our stadium, and from a financial point of view, their media value, so the number of people who watch them either on TV or in the stadiums is massive. It's 5 times as much as the Welsh clubs get. So the South Africans have brought a huge amount into the competition. And it's our challenge to demonstrate to fans in Wales what a good league it is. And that's what we have to do. And that probably isn't something that we at Ospreys will be able to do alone. So that's something that I think the WRU and the 4 regions will need to do together, because it's Welsh rugby fans are, and my stepfather was Welsh and a massive rugby fan, so I do know a little bit. We used to go to a lot of games together. I do know a bit about Welsh rugby fans, and everybody thinks they're uniquely passionate and all the rest of it. And the Welsh fans might be right in that respect, but in terms of what they like and don't like, they're not really any different from a South African fan or an English fan or a Scottish fan. And when you go to, when Wales go up and play in Edinburgh or whatever, everybody mixes together because basically we're all the same, and we've all got a common love, and we all like rugby to be particularly like this or particularly like, but it's all quite similar. So it's quite odd that so many Welsh fans don't seem to appreciate the URC, and I don't understand it, but we need to understand it, because we've got to overcome that. There's everybody talks about, everything be solved if there was an Anglo-Welsh league. There isn't an Anglo-Welsh league, so it's no good saying, well, that's what we need. There isn't one, and there isn't going to be one. So we have to make the URC work. And the thing is, it shouldn't be difficult, because it is a really good league. It's just that there's a number of people here who don't think that.
Do you think it comes down to a lack of success from the Welsh teams as well? Is that a part of it, do you think? Because no one complains when they're winning. No,
I know everything's right when you're winning, but it's there might be something of that, and the overall challenges that Welsh rugby's had over the last few years have probably made everybody a bit miserable, and that just that impacts on everything. So it's possibly that, but I think with the new management of the WRU, we do have a positive future, and we've been talking about how do we signal that, because we don't want to go out. It would be easy to issue a statement from the WRU and all the regions saying, "Yeah, it's great, we're all working together," but actually that's just words. So we want to do something that fans can see, demonstrate that this has changed, to make people think, actually maybe we are in a new era, because I believe we are. And I think that will cheer people up and make people fall in love with the game again, where perhaps they've fallen a bit out of love with it.
Oh, absolutely. Just sort of on that, then, a bit of a tangent, I suppose. But what attracted you to the Ospreys? Like, what was it? Was it simply they contacted you and you thought this was a really good opportunity, or did you see the potential there? What was it about us?
It's a club that's obviously got a, and I know that it's 20 years old, so it's not necessarily the history of some of the longer established clubs, but it's had a successful past in its time. But there were a couple of things that particularly attracted me. One was the challenge of turning it round. But the other was the support of the Y11 group, and that doesn't mean the financial support, although they are supporting the club heavily. It's the multi-club plan, and you know that we've had players in from Cheetahs, and you know that we've got a relationship with the Hurricanes in New Zealand, and I can't tell you what all the plans are yet. But I'd be happy to come back on and tell you when I can. But,
please do.
I'm happy to do that. But it's a really innovative approach, and nobody else is doing it, and I don't think anybody else will be able to do it. So that's actually going to give us quite a unique advantage, and making the most of that advantage is really exciting.
That's really exciting to hear as not only as the podcast, but as a fan, and that's first and foremost what we are.
Yeah, I'm excited. This wasn't the only job that I was offered, so it was a big part in my decision to come here. And I know in the past there's been talk about we're going to be a global powerhouse. Nobody's talking about that. We don't want to be a global powerhouse. We want to be the hub of our community. That's what we want to do. And the hub for fans, the hub for local businesses, the hub for the other clubs in our area. But having these relationships with other clubs around the world, it is hugely advantageous. And people haven't seen just how big that is yet, but it's going to be really exciting.
When we might start to see the sort of things you're teasing come through and chase up?
Yeah, not very long in the future.
Okay, interesting.
Boys, do you
enigmatic, but we've got a comms plan around it, and
okay.
So we'll stick to that.
Do you gents have any more questions for Lance before we we don't want to take up too much of his time?
I've got one fine, maybe a bit off topic. How much of the last 10 minutes did you think from Sunday's game did you think there's a real chance that we might win this?
Yeah, I mean that was an amazing performance. I spoke to Toby on Friday when he was down there, and I said, how's it going? And he said, well, training's been interested because most of the boys haven't been a mile above sea level before, so it's that's been different. And as you run out of oxygen, so it's pushing against the South African pack for 80 minutes is hard work at sea level, but a mile above sea level's like even harder. But I'd like to say I thought it was never in doubt and that I was sure right from the beginning that we were going to win. But as we said at the start, I believe in integrity and honesty. So it was it was a very exciting finale to the game, and actually just shows how tight the boys are, because they're all exhausted. There's no oxygen in the air. They were, what was it, 11 points down with 7 minutes to go, something like that. And they didn't roll over, even though there was a load of youngsters on the pitch. And they scored 3 tries and won the game. And what a fabulous result.
Do you have a favourite player that you someone stuck out so far?
Of course not. Of course not. I like all of them equally.
That's the boss's answer. That's what my boss says about his employees, and then brilliant.
We all know employees Kieran Williams though.
Yeah, my boss is one of my bosses is a big Leinster fan, and told me the other day that but his coach at university was a certain Mr. Toby Booth. So,
Oh wow.
so when he found out I was an Ospreys fan, he was quite excited about that. He was reminiscing on his university days. But even then, that I think that's the type of thing that endears us to Toby a lot, is that life experience, as well as being, this rugby man with a philosophy that certainly us three share deeply, but having that life experience as well as being
no doubt he's a great asset to the club.
He's fantastic. Well, Lance, we don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for giving up this time. Definitely, we will hope to get you back on the pod. And hopefully as well that we'll come down to you and maybe do some stuff, do some work as well, because I think as a pod we're keen to meet up and get involved with the club as much as we can. And you've been so active on Twitter. Just in case people don't know where you are on social media, how can they tweet you their ideas about an Anglo-Welsh League?
Because I haven't had enough of those yet, so that would be good. So I'm on X at Lance_Bradley_. But if you search for my name, there's another guy who's a surgeon in America who's also called Lance Bradley, who keeps writing to me saying, I keep getting a lot of people talking to me about rugby. What is rugby? So make sure you get the second underscore at the end. But that's where you find me. We
could send him a shirt, convert him maybe.
Yeah, I might do. I've ended up having some quite good chats with him, but
that's brilliant.
Do that.
So absolutely brilliant, Lance. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you once again.
No,
and
my pleasure.
I will see you again soon.
Great.